What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Green's House. I am Jericho Green. I'm hanging out with you, but as you know, on this channel, it's all about the interviews. It's all about me hanging out with interesting people and hearing their story. How did they get to where they crossed my radar to where I wanted to have them here to talk to me? Today's no different. Um, if you're in the comic book world at all, especially recently, you know who this man is. He hit us with Isom. Just got done with Isom too. I had the pleasure of meeting him at Comic-Con 2023 in San Diego, along with Dean Kane. Shout out to my man Gabe El Taib. We hung out at his booth for a little bit. And some things I was just talking to him before we kicked it off about something that he does. I didn't even know. I knew him as, Mr. Young Ripper 59 on YouTube. As I just mentioned, Isom 2 in the comic book world. But this man is a jack of many trades. So let's bring him in. Mr. Eric July.
Yo, what is up, man? Again, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you, man. Finally, at San Diego Comic-Con, man. And of course, man, I appreciate you having me here.
Hey, thank you for your time. I know you're busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. So thank you for carving out a few minutes for me.
Oh, man, anytime.
Before we even get into the questions, I see the hat you're wearing. So you're a sports fan. That lets me know that you're probably from the Dallas area. I myself, I'm not a huge fan of basketball. I usually get into it around the playoffs. I support the Warriors. I can't call myself a fan because I wasn't there through the lean years, basically 20, 25 years where nobody gave a damn about the Warriors. I wasn't there, but I do like to see a local team do well. But I am a big football fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead and assume that since you are a Dallas Mavericks fan, that you're probably a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Correct. That is correct.
Now, I know you have somebody in your camp. I believe his name's Brandon. And we talked a little bit about our difference in football teams at Comic-Con. I'm gonna put that on the back burner. Brandon, I'm coming for you, man.
Man.
We'll do a little sports talk. We'll bounce around a little bit.
Yeah.
But and it's football season, so it makes sense that we talk about that a little bit. Maybe the history of my 49ers and your Dallas Cowboys.
Man, one of the biggest rivalries ever. Yeah,
I'd say the greatest. I think as far as longevity, we can't match with the Bears and the Packers. They've been doing that forever. But definitely Niners, Cowboys, great rivalry in football history. And obviously, you know where I fall on that side of the argument. But we'll get to that, man.
Yeah.
But let's start at the beginning. Before Young Ripper 59, before Isom, before Backwards, and all of those things, what were you up to? Where did you grow up? How did you grow up?
Oh man. Well, I'm from Dallas, born and raised, and I grew up in Dallas, Oak Cliff area. And yeah, I was, for lack of better terms, a complete knucklehead growing up. The guy that saw the fork in the road, and I thankfully at the right point I made the right decision. But it was easily could have been one of those another statistic. Let's call it that. But yeah, man, grew up being an idiot, and I was a sports guy. That was kind of my ticket out. Let's just say that. Things changed for the better because of my legs and being a track and field athlete. It was one of those things where it kind of whipped me into shape when I realized that, hey, I could do something with this. Obviously ended up going to the University of Memphis out of college, then finished my collegiate track and field career at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. So grew up had all these interests, all this talent, but it was largely wasted doing other goofy stuff. Yeah, I was in the hip hop scene, definitely in Dallas. And that was kind of my first big kind of explosion as a name. That's where the name Ripple came from. That aspect of me. And man, just had a lot of growth. Going into 17, 18, 19 years of age. And once I felt comfortable being who it is that I was, and really kind of fell into shape. Let's just call it that. I started to branch out and do all of the things, and I did it unapologetically. So you mentioned me being in music as an example. I didn't perform like more heavier music, like with metal and the harder rock stuff, until I was in college, right? Even though I had interest in it, right? Because I grew up listening to pretty much everything. I think my biggest introduction to like the rap and the hip hop blend of within the rock stuff was Beastie Boys. My mother put me on them growing up. And obviously I also grew up in the age where you had that kind of new metal scene where you had people trying to mix that stuff, Linkin Park being one of the biggest ones, mixing those sorts of elements. And that kind of sent me down the just harder rock, Pantera, all that stuff. I was listening to that stuff in the 90s as well. But yeah, it was I started to perform that, and I realized that God put me on this earth to create, because that's when I saw the most success, right? So even when I deviate, like we had the comic book stuff where I would talk about that, and I've always been a comic fan, but I got into commentary stuff, talking about that like stuff on my YouTube. But even then, I saw success. Make no mistake, a lot of people know me from that, but nothing to the degree of what happened with the Riververse, right? Like Riververse, and that's me being a creator as opposed to a commentator. So, that's what I'm put on this earth to do. That's what I feel. It's been legitimized with the success of the Riververse. Been a creative person, but I didn't always pursue it like I should have. And the Riververse was just the latest reminder of that. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, man.
Right. So you mentioned the Dallas hip hop scene. So being from California, when you say Dallas hip hop, I'm thinking Paul Wall, slabs, that whole thing, the rims that stick out,
Yeah,
and
Pokes,
pipping
Flanks,
on
yeah,
fofos and all that.
yeah,
Was that the type of hip hop you started with? Because listening the stuff I was listening to now, that's much more lyrical. You're not going to
yeah,
hear that and think, oh, that's Dallas. That you can hear the
exactly.
Dallas in it. So was that scene big, the hip hop you got into, or was it pretty much just overwhelmed with the whole Paul Wall, Slim Thug kind of stuff that we
Yeah.
know?
Well, it's funny because obviously Houston had that big explosion, right? And it really took over the entire state. I mean, it kind of started with more Port Arthur stuff where you had like UGK, and all of that was really massive. And you had Ghetto Boys, all that. But that era of what you're referring to with the Swisher House and
Yeah.
Screws, DJ Screw before that, all that was huge. But Dallas had its own thing kind of bubbling during that same era, right? And it's funny because I came obviously up in that. It was like types of songs that people were, it was crazy. Like Atlanta had their whole crunk stuff, and it was all lively and stuff, and we had like our own version of it. Wasn't of that, it was more so our own thing. People we rap about fighting and doing other wild stuff, and it had this kind of different kind of twang to it. It's actually an old song that I did when I was like 16, called Bring the Beef. It has all these views on YouTube because I re-uploaded it when I was like, I think like 18. I think 19, I re-uploaded it, and people remembered it. Oh, I remember the song, because I couldn't perform that song. Me and the other guys couldn't perform that song. Look, I was the second verse on it. Lucky to even get to my verse before 7 fights broke out and the club got shut down, and what have you. It was crazy. But we had that kind of thing. But the other thing that was popping off going into the mid to latter half of the 2010s was what people know as like the boogie movement, right? Whereas people it's funny. Look at the whole Teach Me How to Dougie thing, right? And that was so far after it. As a reason why Smooth says I ain't from Dallas, but I D-Town Boogie in the song is because that's all us. Like we created that that whole dance and everything that's centered around that. So you had that hybrid of that stuff happening in the Dallas hip hop scene. But to your point, like I was always detached from it because I won't say detached from it. I was very much a part of those movements. I was actually core to a lot of those movements. But as an actual rapper, the stuff that I was listening to, like when I was on my downtime, was like Nas, was like, the like Lauryn Hill was was who got me into music. You know what I mean? Like listen to Miseducation. Well, not I won't say got me into music, made me want to start performing it because she did the singing and the rapping thing with that Miseducation album. So I was listening to stuff like that coming up. And if there was, people don't think of Doc, from NWA as DLC as a Dallas artist, but he very much is. That's where he's from. You know what I mean? And so he's way more lyrical than pretty much everybody that's came out of our city. So for me, that's was the scene that I came up in, and that's like the type of music that I would granted, we had this massive movement, but even if you hear me on these other various songs, like I rap different basically everybody on it, because that was the type of music that I was listening to, the more lyrical kind of stuff.
And speaking of Lauryn Hill, real quick, I think Lauryn Hill, and I've had people disagree with me on this because of her mainstream success, but I think Lauryn Hill is the greatest female MC. You
I
go
agree with
back
that.
to The Score, summer of '96. There's a song on there called How Many Mics? And she is the first one to rap. And I mean, and she's not tight. Oh, she's good for a female.
Yeah.
No, Lauryn Hill
She's a spitter,
has
bro.
bars.
Yeah.
That girl can flow, man, and her voice.
Yeah.
Even if she never rapped again and just sang,
Yep.
that woman is supremely talented. And to hear, so I want to kind of segue, still speaking about hip hop. You get older, time goes by. I think hip hop definitely is for the young. Now, those of us, you know, you and myself who are older, you know, I'm in my early 40s, you're in your early 30s. So new hip hop isn't for us.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely for the young. We have our artists out with us who you mentioned, Nas and things like that. We still listen to them. We still check in on them when they come out with something new. But do you find yourself kind of being an old curmudgeon? You know, that stuff, you know, it sounds terrible. Or are you able to say, I understand it's for young people, but damn, some of that.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, it's tough for me to do that. And you know, I never wanted to become that, oh man, the old guy that doesn't like the new stuff. But I do think there's a differentiation, right? Between kind of, you know, because you had the golden era of hip hop where you had like the, you know, the Rakims, Big Daddy Kanes, and KRS Ones, and these were guys that could actually spit. But then even when you move into the '90s, where you had like the Nas's of the world and all these guys that could come up, that came up, that were actually spitters, even though those are really two different generations of rappers. And I think when we got like where we're at now, there's a stark difference between what's being put. I mean, objectively speaking, right? I think there's a difference. So I don't think it's more of when people like myself is like, man, I can't get with it. Sure, there'll be some new cat that's like, oh, he was okay. When people came, like when Kendrick first came out, people were like, oh, well, that's one of the newer guys. It's all right, you know, and comparatively to other guys. But a lot of it is just not really. When I say good, I mean, I do think that, yes, art is subjective. I agree with that. However, I do think that there is a difference between, like, there's some level of objectivity with spitting. I do think there's an element of that, and people that are students of the game, I think, would speak to that. There's a difference between like who I think is my favorite rapper versus who I think are the best, right? And I think anybody that understands hip hop can actually differentiate the two, right? Like, you know, I love, for example, my favorite rapper from Texas. You mentioned that the era that you were talking about. My favorite rapper of all time is Chameleon. You know what I mean? Like that's my favorite. However, you ask me who my top 5 of all time, there's no way he's even anything close to it, because he's not as good as the Nas of the world. He's not as good as Rakim. You know what I mean? He's not as good as these people as actual spitters. So for me, I think the level of, if I'm looking at the art that is being put out right now, that is being described as rap, for the most part, that's I don't think I'm being an old guy by saying, dude, it's just not good. Like it's just not good. I don't think I'm being the old guy by saying that. Maybe some people out there disagree with me, but it's just not good, man.
Yeah, there's certain mainstream artists what's her name? Sexy Red.
Oh God.
And I'm not even going to mention her hit song. It's too disgusting to say.
Yeah.
But if you listen to the lyrics, it's just, especially somebody with your talent, somebody could get one of those egg timers, you know, for baking cakes and set it to 1 minute and say, Eric, you got to write something as good as this. If you won't even call it as good, you could do that. You could have head trauma and write something. I mean, yeah, it is. You're right. You don't want to be that old man in the room. Well, we're back, and when but this stuff is bad.
Yeah.
This mainstream and rap. I don't call it hip hop.
Yeah.
I think that's something different.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
this new rap is bad, man.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And speaking of Chameleonaire, quick story. I mentioned I worked at a radio station, and he came through. This was Riding Dirty was big, and the station I worked at wasn't as big as the San Jose or San Francisco, but on their way to those radio stations, Wild 94.9, KMEL, and stuff like that in the Bay, they would always stop at my radio station because it was literally right off the highway up Highway 101 to the Bay Area. So he came through, interviewing everything. Great dude. I shout out to Chameleonaire. He is a really cool dude, very humble, very nice. But that's, like you said, it's true. Like, he would be your favorite rapper, but if we're talking top 5 all time, he probably wouldn't make the cut.
Not even close.
But he's definitely carved out his spot in hip hop. Me personally, my favorite MC of all time, and I'll die on this hill. I was talking about this with my brother a couple weeks ago. He's the hardcore MF Doom fan.
Okay.
And my favorite rapper of all time is Pharoah Monch.
Okay. Simon
Says and all that. I mean, that dude.
Oh, he can spit, man.
And for those of you who may not know, spitting, that means he can rap.
Yeah.
He can spit some lyrics. That's my favorite rapper of all time. I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of times, so I'll go toe to toe with anybody on that argument because
he's good.
I mean, you want, as a hip hop fan, you want to listen to people who you got to pause that and run that back. You want to listen to somebody who gets you excited. You know, this dude is about to drop some fire, and there's nothing new under the sun. You know, and I don't think anybody's coming up with any new words, but it's how you put them together to tell your story, to make your point. So aside from Chameleonaire, or maybe Chameleonaire is this one for you, but who is the MC for you that you get excited when you hear they have a new project, or when you put on one of their songs to where you know you're about to be treated to, you know, a gift?
I'll give you obviously Nas has got to be up there for me for sure. Whenever he, you know, decides he wants to come out with a little something, I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. Royce the 5'9" is the other one. For sure. Royce 5'9" is the other. And I would say it used to be M. I would put M in that conversation as well. Obviously coming from the same camp as well, but for sure Royce. I'll look forward to, because, you know, the way that I see it, you know, and people that listen to my music pick up on this. I'm a wordsmith, so I do think that it does require a certain level of talent to be able to be also if you're telling a story or sticking to a topic or whatever, while also being a wordsmith. It's not easy. You know, I think another one that does it real well that I love, even though he doesn't drop like all the time, is Elzhi. He used to be of Slum Village. I think he's killer as well. So yeah, I would put that up there. I love listening to Wordsmith, man, and you know, hearing these guys, you know, like I remember one of the first tracks where I was like, my mind was blown as a youngster. Probably the only track that I could say Nas probably got destroyed on would be that, you know, Fast Life with him and Coogee Rap. And, you know, Coogee Rap, another one, just like he's an actual wordsmith, you know what I mean? And listening to guys like that is what, you know, to your point where you hear something, you're like, wait a minute, what in the world did he say? And sometimes you don't even catch it your first 5 listen, you know, listen throughs. You're like, wait a minute, he said this, and that. Like, that to me is like the art of it all, being a wordsmith, being a poet in that aspect. I think that's the part that's kind of lost on with so new kind of genre, because they treat bars like, okay, it's an end game. It's like, I need to rhyme this and I now need to rhyme this, and really that's it. How I get there, it doesn't even matter. Hell, it doesn't even have to rhyme half the damn time for a lot of these guys. And I think that's where the artistic aspect of this game is just like so fundamentally changed, because I think for a lot of guys that grew up on this, they would listen to it for that, and now it's kind of shifted. And I loved when we used to get a mix of both. I get it. People love, like, yeah, the producer, they have their role in the game, but I do think hip hop is at its best when you can hear DJ Premier do his thing on something that he used these different samples with, came up with some crazy beat, and then you had Nas jump on it. So you got the best of both worlds, this killer beat that's produced while also this killer lyricist. Whereas now it seems more people like, hey, the actual artist on it is just a means to an end, man. You know what I mean? And people are just kind of rocking. And it's like, you know, that to me is, the game's just fundamentally changed.
for sure. And I think with the advent of social media, it's easier for you to get your voice out there. No matter what you're saying, it's easier. The playing field has almost been leveled in a certain way. But man, speaking of DJ Premier from Texas, I don't remember exactly where in Texas, but it's amazing how he's from Texas, but then he was somehow drafted to New York City, and he made any New York MC, Nas, any of the MCs who have been around for a long time, Jay-Z, any of those guys, no matter where you're from, if you got a Premier beat, you made it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You know a Premier beat when you hear it. But when I found out he was from Texas, I figured he was born and raised Brooklyn, Bronx, something like that. But no, he's from Texas, man. And his ability to take songs and samples and make it his own is crazy. I had the pleasure of meeting and hanging out with Guru, R.I.P.
Nice.
Guru, who was a gang star with DJ Premier.
Yeah.
And he said, because I used to do an underground hip hop show at the radio station every Sunday night, and he said my name in a freestyle, and I was like, "Take me now, Lord, I'm good." Guru mentioned me in a freestyle. It was great, man. It really was. And rap and hip hop, the whole culture and everything has been. I wish people who don't listen to rap, who aren't into hip hop, I wish that they could listen to lyricists before they listen to like the mainstream garbage. And that mainstream, that candy, that empty calorie kind of rap has always been around, but it was always tempered by real MCs, real lyricists, where we could, as fans, could always compare it to that. Like, yeah, I know, they're doing their thing mainstream, but I know what the real stuff is. I know what the good stuff is. But it just seems like the bad is kind of, overtaking the good. Like the lyricists don't get their shine because of the, as I call her, retardy B, or, the sexy reds and these. Oh man, I mean,
it's so bad, man. And in the industry, I mean, I think that even like the female MC game is like, it's in obviously a sad state. But to your point, I mean, you had the Lauryn Hills of the world that were coming up, and there was always something that, and I think that lets you know that the cultural change, because like, even though you had your like I won't say even mainstream, that's what it was. You had the Vanilla Ices and the MC Hammers and all that. You had all that, but like most of the top selling artists were like incredibly talented. Like you had like Golden Era, you had the Eric B and Rakims and the Big Daddy Kanes, and then you move into the 90s. We all know that all that stuff these were guys from Big and all the guys that were the bigger artists, the Pacs of the world. Like these guys could actually they could say something. You know what I mean? Let's just say that. They could say something. I think that's what fundamentally changes, or what shows you that it's in a bad state, because rarely are you seeing guys that are just straight spitters that are having the top selling albums or top listened to albums, or the top it's just fundamentally changing. I think to your point, maybe that's what it is. It's that these guys, they aren't coming up on this. They don't have anything to compare it to. So their introduction to this genre, or whatever you want to call it, is a lot of this slop. And so they don't know any better. And it's to the point to where they're thrown off when they hear something else. And they're like, well, who wants to listen to that? I'm like, well, this is the essence of it right here. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, this is the essence. You don't have what you have unless you had these guys that were capable of doing this right here. So it is in a sad state. I do every now and then you'll see some like young cat trying to come through and take it back, but it's going to be a lot of hard work. Because to your point, you have folks that are just I think objectively not good at spitting. They're not any good, but that's a lot of people's introduction into this game, and that's unfortunate, man.
It really is. I mean, they're eating bologna sandwiches or molded bread, and we're trying to be like, no, man, I got some ribeyes right here. I don't want that. I want to eat this crap.
Yeah,
and I don't. And maybe it's their youth. You don't know what you don't know when you're young, and you think that, oh man, this is great. And I remember riding around with my mom sometimes. I'm like, oh, Mom, you heard this new song? She's like, man, they sampled that from, Frankie Beverly or something.
Yeah. Maybe, same way. Yep.
maybe it's some of that. But yeah, and speaking of Royce the 5'9", I remember in one of the many songs that I've listened to of his, he says, I'm like a camera because I shoot fast and I'm steady developing. and
Yeah.
like stuff like you're like, oh man, that's stuff you got to rewind. And I
Yep.
just hope that the youth who are swimming in this sea of trash, that they one day, are rescued and find respite on the island of good lyrics.
Yeah.
I really do.
For sure. For
Um,
sure.
so we were talking about this, or you mentioned earlier that you were a track and field aficionado. So what was your event or
My event was
events?
the 100. Oddly enough, I became better, and even though I hated the race, the 200, I didn't run that even. I ran that like I think one time in high school. The 200, it was always one, and I read the 4x2, which they run. You don't run it in college, but you run that in high school out here. But yeah, 100 was my race. That was what I love to do, and still here. I checked the other day. It's what going on. I think 13 years. The 100-meter record for Texas A&M Corpus, Texas A&M University Corpus Christi. I still have it. It is there.
Oh wow.
Nobody has got it yet. So yeah, man, that's something that even now, I still train every day. I'm getting back to training like kind of like along the lines of what it is that I was doing, because really it's all that I know. So sprinting, high interval stuff is sprint training. So that was my thing, man. 100 meters and the 200 meter, which, like I said, by my senior year of college, I became better at that than I did the 100. I don't know what happened, but here we are.
And what's your record?
10:44. I have run a 10:3 before, but it was wind aided. So legally, the record that I have is 10:44. Yeah, ran it at Texas State. I think 20. I was 2010, 2011, something like that. Yeah.
Man, I did track in high school. Obviously, I was a thrower, shot
Well,
put,
yeah,
discus.
yeah,
So but being around track and field, that's a blistering time right there. 10:4 is extremely fast. So you have one opportunity to be trained by one of these Olympic athletes. Do you choose Jesse Owens, Carl Lewis, or Michael Johnson?
Oh man, dude. All right, I'm biased. Dallas, Texas, Michael Johnson, Skyline High School. So I'm biased there. He was a guy that I saw coming up. So I would say him because of, I don't know, for a guy that ran like a damn robot like he did.
Yeah, it
Uh
was unorthodox.
yeah, and for him to be run, I think people need to understand. Well, yes, obviously he had the 4 and the 200 record, the 200, both of them those recently broken. The 400 meter, I think, was the most recent. We know Bolt broke the 200. He was running by himself basically his entire career. There was nobody near him. At least Bolt had like Tyson Gay, right? He had,
Mhm.
Johan Blake, guys that were at least comparable, right? There was nobody near this guy. But the Carl Lewis, for what a lot of people don't understand, that he was just as good as he was of a sprinter. He was a hell of a field athlete and being a long jumper as well. And I think he was he in that race that Johnson ran at record? I can't remember. I think he was. He's obviously older in the two, but between both of those, I have to say Michael Johnson, because I'm like, he had something figured out, because he, like you said, he ran like a freaking robot, but he was flying, man. That guy had
Man,
wheels, man. He just had wheels.
yeah, Michael Johnson. I was at '96 Olympics. That was
Mhm.
the first time I
Yep.
saw him. The gold cleats, and yeah, he ran like straight up and
Yeah.
down. It was weird. It must have been natural. That must have just been the way, because I don't know that a track coach would train you to
No, they would
run
tell
like
you
that.
not to run like that. They'd say you're too far back. You shouldn't be running like that. But who's gonna tell Michael Johnson to stop running
I
like the
mean,
way he
yeah,
did?
with a neck full of medals, you can't
Yeah.
really tell him everything. But I love the Olympics, man. I love to root for America, and I think it's something that kind of brings people together. That we're
Mhm.
all on that team, so we're all gonna root for America. But track and field has always been my favorite events to watch. I mean, just it's amazing. It's amazing for somebody, especially the Olympics, every 4 years. So all your life up until those Olympics, that's what you're training for.
Yep.
You're training. Your 4 years are for that moment, and that's always blown me away. And I love that America has always dominated. Now, like you mentioned, Usain Bolt, Jamaica.
Yep.
They're making some serious noise over the past 10 years, or more than that. When did Usain Bolt come in? Like 2008.
Yeah, that was 2000. That was Beijing, right? So yeah, that was 2008.
Yeah, so they had a quick little dominance in track and field, but the reason I picked those three to ask you is because they're from really three different eras.
Yeah.
Jesse Owens, they didn't have the training and the supplements and the working out, the regimens and the equipment back then, but he was still, he had Hitler pissed off driving back home after those 36 Olympics.
Yeah.
And Carl Lewis, he dominated the 80s. Whether
Yeah.
you were into track and field or not, if you pick up a magazine or a box of Wheaties, he was there. And then, Michael Johnson, they just get better and better as these eras go on. And I remember, I'll never forget Michael Johnson, straight up and down, gold cleats, gold chain, and that bottom lip just relaxed, like everything.
Just relaxed face. And I ran the complete opposite. Like I was like this. Like there's a video of my 1044. It's out there, right? You can see it. It's on YouTube, and you'll see like I'm like this. My neck's all tense. I'm not relaxed again. He was such a special runner, man. Because there was like almost no movement right here, right? Like from his spine, and he was just flying. Like nobody was gonna catch that guy. It was nothing that you could do. When he hit the straightaway, if he was in front of you in front of the straightaway, which he often was, nobody had a chance.
That's the way it was going to end.
Yeah,
it was going to end with him in front of you. Now, did you have a nemesis? Did you have a Lex Luthor, so to speak, in college? Like, was there another athlete where?
It's funny. I don't know if people are familiar with it, but this was my affiliate, familiar with him, good friend of mine, but he was my rival, Marquise Goodwin. For those you don't know,
receiver.
Wide receiver in NFL. Shout out to Marquise. He's from out here in Rowlett in the Dallas area. Him and we ran at state together. He's a year younger than me. So we ran that state together. I was competing against him. He went to UT. Obviously, he went to Texas. I went to A&M Corpus, so I couldn't get away from him. So always it was Marquise, one hell of an athlete, hell of a long jumper. Obviously went to the Olympics doing a long jump, triple jump, but I believe long jump though. And yeah, he's just a hell of an athlete in the NFL. Shout out to him. But yeah, it was all those Texas guys. I knew all those Rocket. I knew all those guys that were over there that I would compete against just so often, even though we weren't in the same conference. Track is different. It's not like you only compete against people that, you go up against like you would a sport, or generally like you're going up against a team. Oftentimes these guys are in your conference or whatever. Track is like you go to a track, you might get your head bust by some D2 cats. Like it's just everybody, it's individual sport. But because of that, just the general area, I always saw Texas like all the time because they were right up 35.
Yeah, Marquise Goodwin, he played for my San Francisco 49ers. Yeah. And I remember one play in particular, it was on a very sad day in his life, unfortunately. But I think it was Nick Mullins, the backup to the backup, and he just threw a bomb. It was a go route. Marquise Goodwin, man, he just smoked. I don't even remember who he was against. He just burned him all the way to the end zone, ran under the ball. I mean, it was beautiful. That dude has wheels, so it doesn't surprise me that he has a track background. Of course,
he's one of the few guys that, like, when it's funny, people would bring up all these guys. Who's the fastest? Tyreek. Yeah, he's a track guy as well, former track guy. I'm always like, Marquise Goodwin. I'm putting him up against anybody in the league. That guy, even right now, so he'd be 32. The guy can fly, man. And he has legitimate foot speed, man. That man was fast. Yeah, y'all guys got another guy. And speaking of, I mean, he has some wheels. He wasn't Marquise Goodwin from my area in Crabtree. Oak Cliff's on.
Crabtree.
Yeah, Oak Cliff's on. Crabtree caught a high. Shout out to him. But yeah, man, it's funny seeing these guys that we would compete against, that I competed against in various ways, doing various sports growing up, and seeing some of these guys see success as professionals, man. It's awesome to see.
Now, I mentioned, I was a thrower. So every once in a while, they would have what's called the weight man's relay.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's at the end of the meet, you get the shot put discus players together, or, you got a 4x1 relay. And that was, we love those.
We didn't get to do that. Like that.
So, and some of the big dudes had wheels.
Yeah.
I was one of them. But, you know. So was there an event that you kind of wish that you could compete in? Like, was there another, maybe a jump in or a javelin or something like that, where you're like, man, I wish I could have
For
We
sure,
got
for
into
sure
that.
should have been long jump. Like I don't know why I never got to do a fielding event like outside of like middle school. I think I did the coach just like at the district meet just because he wanted points, put me in like the high jump or something. But I had the frame and the talent to be a good long jumper because I was fast, so I'm already coming down the runway flying, but I could jump. Like I could dunk a basketball. I could just flat out jump. So I regret having not ever got into being even if it was triple jump, maybe I should have been some sort of doing some type of field event, so it had to be long jump. It's funny you mentioned Carl. That if I'm getting trained, that's what I'm getting trained in by him. Be a sprinter and the jumper, for sure. But yeah, it had to be long jump.
So let's get this out of the way. You're from Dallas. I'm a Niner fan.
Yeah,
So were born in what, 1990?
yeah, yeah,
So you missed the 80s rivalry. You were coming in, coming into this earth at the beginning of the
yep,
90s rivalry, but being that you weren't, older, like you weren't an adult or a young adult, like in the early 90s, when it was Emmett and Troy Aikman against Steve Young and Jerry Rice. I was about 12 years old.
hmm,
So you were, tiny baby,
yeah.
toddler. But being that you missed those rivalry years, and it still lasts to this day, do you have a deep hatred for the Niners like I have for the
Well,
Cowboys?
yeah, it is still there because even I mean when you start to become conscious as a kid, I mean that was still a thing. You know what I mean? Like only Young's years, and you understand Dion and Charles Haley shifting the kind of the dynamic between like we were coming up. I was coming up when all of that was on the latter half of that, and you learn about that stuff because when I would say about probably I started to like really love football like at 6, 7 years of age. There's all these pictures of me in my Emmitt Smith jersey when I was a kid. So yeah, I mean, I came up obviously on the latter half of their sort of getting that third Super Bowl, and during that era when I actually could see it and at least understand what the hell was going on. And then obviously as you age, you start to understand. You look back at that stuff like, wow, I lived through that era, and yeah, it was a huge rivalry. And again, we talk about Dion kind of shifting Charles Haley as well, shifting the sort of this rivalry, and it's a cool thing to learn about because yeah, it still exists when you see it even now to this day. San Francisco 49ers going up against. I mean, hell, we've had some recent playoffs stuff
Yeah,
go down between the two. So even coming out on the latter half of that, it's still I'm very much familiar with it. And yeah, that's one of the teams outside of obviously the Giants and the Eagles of the world. It's for sure the 49ers. It's a massive rivalry that we despise each other, and it's fun.
yeah, well, we sure do. And we mentioned Brandon. I don't want to talk about him too much, but we mentioned
Brandon.
Brandon, an associate of yours, who also likes the Dallas Cowboys. I assume he's from the area
Yeah, he's from Dallas. Yeah,
as well. And he said he was going to come on. I was on Gabe's show, father daughter dance that he does with his daughter, and we got Brandon on the FaceTime real quick. And he was working though. He kept saying, I'm checking in real quick, but I got to get back to work. So
yeah,
respect to him for that.
yeah.
But he seemed to think that he could, I don't know, have a debate with me about Cowboys Niners. It's not recommended. But what I like is debating with sensible Cowboys fans. We have both teams have their limitations. It's not, don't say week one we're going to the Super Bowl. Like, relax. You got to take it 1 week at a time.
Yeah.
So I like having those back and forth. I like dealing with sensible Cowboys fans and debating and talking trash.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's what men do, and I
Absolutely.
enjoy it. But I will always have the deepest recesses of my heart. I will always keep a
Wouldn't have
hate
it no other
candle
way.
burning. I will always keep a hate candle burning in the windowsill for the Dallas Cowboys.
We wouldn't have it. We would have it no other way. That's the only way to have it. That's what makes this whole thing fun is despising us. But and vice versa, understanding. And when we have something special like we've had in recent years, they end up meeting in the playoffs, man, it's going to be big. It's going to be big for both areas. It's going
Yeah.
to be big for the sport, and it's just fun because everybody's also reliving those days
Yeah.
those rivalries in the 80s and the 90s, man. That's fun.
And nowadays the word trauma gets overused, but I experienced trauma. I was accosted in the Dallas airport by several TSA employees. I was wearing my Niner hat on purpose. It wasn't no accident that I was wearing my Niner hat going through the Dallas airport. And man, like 4 or 5 TSA employees were going by on one of those carts, man, and they hit the brakes. And I heard they went past me and I heard them hit the brakes. I was like, here we go. What the hat? So, I did what I had to do. I turned around and blazed all 5 of them. It was fun, man. I loved it. And I'm looking forward to playing the Cowboys this year.
Yeah.
We got you guys on the regular season.
Yep.
And then, if Dak holds it together, maybe we'll see you in the postseason.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on Dak? On your, as T.O. said, that's my quarterback.
That's my quarterback. Yeah, it's funny. Look, I've always had my reservations with him, as a player. And I think people are kind of more so starting to come around to it. I will say this, and it's funny. I was just talking on someone else's show about this. Look, people maybe have selective amnesia, but either way, that first year, right? Dak comes in. Romo got hurt. Obviously, he came in and he took over. A lot of people forget that Romo was healthy by playoff time.
Mm-hmm.
They opted to say, no, we're going to go with him because, it's it's young guy, it's the hot hand. I still to this day believe that considering that team and how loaded it was and how good they were playing, the best chance that they had to win the Super Bowl that year it was going to go through Romo, and they neglected to not do it. And it's funny watching people because Dallas we want to talk about sensible, guy like about this sport. Dallas is such an intriguing the city because they're so flaky, right? In the sense that I remember how people just thought this guy was the next coming of Jesus during that window of time, right? And now people are starting to have more kind of reservations about him. And it's like, well, we had an opportunity and we neglected not to. He's the same to me. That's not to me. It's just the truth. He's the same guy he was then, which I mean, you can say for better because you expect him to, or for worse. Let's say that because he's expected to grow. But he's the same guy then that he was now. And I think that we'll be looking back at it just going as the years go by. Your best chance with the best quarterback that you had, that you could have possibly had during that period of time was healthy. And you neglected to not go with him. And now you're stuck. You've paid this guy a lot of money. And people are like, well, maybe we paid him too much. Yeah, you don't say. You don't say.
49ers had a very similar experience, maybe around the same time. Alex Smith
gets hurt.
Kaepernick, he comes in. He's the brand new shiny red Ferrari. Alex Smith gets healthy. Jim Harbaugh decides, I'm going to stick with the hot hand, the young guy, and, sent Alex Smith on his way. But I think that was our best. I think had we had Alex Smith under center during that 2012 Super Bowl against the Ravens, I think we would have won because Alex Smith wouldn't have thrown it to the aforementioned Michael Crabtree 3 times in a row. He probably would have handed it off to Frank Gore, who had been running through the Baltimore Ravens like diarrhea all day.
Yeah.
Pre and post power outage, Frank Gore was doing his thing. But for some reason, let's keep Cap in there and you waste 3 of our plays to Michael Crabtree. Because everybody in the world watching that Super Bowl knew who he was going to throw to, including the Baltimore Ravens. So I feel you on that one, man. I understand that moment in time. So let me ask you this. Isom 2, both very successful. And are you married and do you have a family?
Family not yet, but I am of course married to my lovely wife, for sure. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How long you guys been married?
It is going on we're on a 2nd year, so yeah.
Okay, newlyweds.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
your first 5 years are considered newlyweds.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Appreciate that.
And these projects, as you go on and get into more endeavors, like you mentioned, getting more serious about your music again, and continuing with the Isom saga, if you will. When you have that family, being successful is going to mean it's not. I mean, obviously, it's important to you, and you're driven and you're consistent now. But when you have that, when you're creating that for your family, it's awesome, man. When you're
Yeah.
providing that life for your family, for your kids, it's awesome. And you mentioned, you were a bit of a knucklehead growing
Oh,
up.
yeah.
So you're going to take that experience and ensure that your children, minimize their knuckleheadism.
For sure.
If you have a boy, he's going to do it. He's going to do something stupid, but you want to minimize
Yeah.
the level of stupid.
Yeah.
You're going to watch out who he hangs out with and things of that nature. So I'm excited for you to experience that, man. But speaking of what made you get, because you mentioned that you've always been a fan of comics, but you weren't like super serious when you were young. What kind of made you say, let me get into this comic book game? And not only that, but let's really get into it. Like, this isn't a hobby. You got to be as successful as you are with that. You got to take that very seriously. So what kind of flipped that switch for you?
Well, for me, it's a few different things. I mean, obviously, looking at the state of the comic book industry, in the direction that it was going, I wasn't a fan, right? And I think people look at it like, not people look at it, they should. Look, man, they look at it like American literature because that's what it is. You know what I mean? And to see it go in the downtrend that it had been going in, it was very, very unfortunate. And people that have watched me, you've seen me complain about it, you've seen me talk about it, discuss it, all that. So I'm looking at it from two perspectives. Creatively, it was a great time, but economically, right? I'm a businessman at the end of the day. It made the most sense to get things going right now, right? So I'm looking at the decline there, and I'm looking at my rise, right? Because I'm involved in all these different things. And I'm like, well, now I can afford to do this. And when am I going to get a better time than now, right? Like now, like, is there going to be, right? You see the decline of the comic book industry, American comic book industry, and also I'm kind of on top of the world right now, so I need to give it a shot. This is something I think people that read comic books they dream of maybe doing, right? Like not necessarily creating their own comic book company, but working in comics, be it for the Marvels, the DC. You dream about that, and I'm like, well, I can do this now. I can create something right now. So I took the leap of faith, right? I invested hundreds of thousands of my own money to make the thing pop off. And took a year conceptualizing everything, building my universe, Bible, all that. And then, it came out the way that it did. Now, I'll be the first to say, and I say it all the time, I had no idea it was going to be this successful. I'm not going to sit up here and pretend like, yeah, I knew it. Like,
Nailed it.
Yeah, there's no way. And nobody could predict a $3.7 million campaign and back doing that one with another multi-million dollar campaign. Like, that wasn't something that I was anticipating, but it happened. And it's like, okay, I'm taking this thing very, very seriously. And that's just how I am. Look, if I'm going to do something creatively, I need to put everything into it. I don't want to be half-assing things. I want to make sure that I'm doing this the correct way. So I did. And I surrounded myself with vets, our good friend, Gabe, veteran in this game, Cliff Richards, all these other people that are just incredible at what it is that they do. Keep me on track, help me out, make this vision come to life. And that's, I think, what the perfect storm was. It was, you had a discontent fan of the industry. You had guys that wanted to get into comics and see someone be a part of the solution as opposed to just griping about the problem. And I think the most important part of it is being competitive, right? Because I think we get this bad rap when you're doing things independently, like it's always supposed to lack in quality. It's all that. I didn't want to make any concessions anywhere. I said, look, if I am to be putting this out, I need folks to see it, and they be like, well, that can be in competition with anything else, and that's what happened. So that's a testament not just to myself, but to this team that we have. And I'm blessed to be in a situation, man, because like I said, I had no idea it was going to be. I figured out we make some money, figured we'd be successful. Had no idea it was going to do this.
That's great, man. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because there is that conception about indie things. If it's independent, if it's underground, so to speak, you expect a lack in quality.
Yep.
And I mentioned that a couple times talking with Gabe and in your project and his project with True Justice American Way. I tell people there's no drop off in quality. Get rid of that negative preconception. This isn't it. Just because it's not backed by these huge conglomerates, you couldn't tell. If you plop this down in front of somebody and you put a DC or a Marvel next to it and the cover was blank, no words, you couldn't tell who made who. You couldn't tell if it was indie or if these big corporations were behind it. And it must feel good. I don't know about you, Eric, but I like to wallow on the low road sometimes. And it must feel good to kick DC and Marvel in their nuts, to not only compete with them and do the same numbers, but do better than them. And that must feel so good, man, to be able to be stomping with the big dogs. I mean, you're top of the food chain.
It does feel good, and the reason why is because it's an example of that this is a very much a possible thing. Because I remember people trying to talk me off the ledge when I had this idea. Hey, you shouldn't do your own thing. You shouldn't do it this way. You shouldn't do your own distribution. You shouldn't do this. And because of what the mainstream guys are doing and what we're competing or how we're competing with them or how we would be. And for us to just come through and see the success that we saw, the reason why it feels so good because now it's an example of, dudes, this very much can be done. And now we live in this most decentralized era that we've ever lived in. We lived in where an era where the means are far more affordable than what they had been in previous years. Definitely with publishing, right? You and I both have, big followings on like YouTubes of the world, and that's a vehicle, right? That's a vehicle to at least get stuff out. So we can do things that have cut out the middleman of this industry. And what Isom did was show, well, yeah, it's very much well possible. Because to your point, it wasn't just that we competed with them, we did better than them, right? When you look at the numbers of what it is that we did in comparison to what they consider trade paperbacks, it's actually not even close. I ain't bragging on it, like it's not even close. Like we have destroyed them in terms of units sold with books that are our size. It's not even close. So it's a very doable thing. The industry is up for grabs, and these people can be competed with. And that's something that we hope that, look, perfect world, we're on the brink of a creative renaissance, right? Where you're going to see people, and it's not just going to be in comics, right? It's going to be maybe in film. And when I was at San Diego Comic-Con, I spoke at this independent filmmakers survival guide, and we were talking about things like this and using the Rippaverse as an example, definitely as we go into like the animation stuff. So it's like, dude, this is a very doable thing. It's a possible thing. We just have to do the work and present it as something and not cut corners. You know what I mean? When we do that, like, we're gonna do it, let's be for real with it. So it felt good because of that example.
And with animation film, it usually has a score, a soundtrack. So I wonder who's going to be on that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, somebody.
But that is so cool, man. And you mentioned the competitive nature of it, and that's obviously been in you from the start, because sports, ultimate competition, me against you, my body, my preparation against your body and your preparation, your talents. And hip hop, especially if you've ever been in the battle scene, battle rap, that's competition. I got my brain and my lyrical talent up against yours. Who can make the crowd yell so loud that I got to stop and let them calm down before I continue my line. And as a fan of battle rap, I started watching battles back in like 2008, 2009. Iron Solomon, Thesaurus, Immaculate, Conceited, all those guys back then. That's one of the things that pisses me off is they drop a tight bar or a tight line, and then the crowd, you're like, man, let them go, let them finish. There's a rhythm to this. But that competition is in you, and you can take that to whatever genre you get into. And I wish you much success, man. I want to see this. I want to see this on the big screen. I want to see Rippaverse and your other accomplishments. I want to see that on the big screen. I want to see that as, because again, if you can compete and surpass them on one front, being comic books, so why not everything else? Why not have a movie that's bigger than this Marvel crap or this DC crap? And projects like this are important in many ways, not only quality entertainment, quality artwork, but policy and politics is downstream from pop culture.
Absolutely.
People have been, I've heard it, but like you mentioned, both of us have considerable YouTube presence, and you hear it all the time that, I wish somebody would make something that didn't have all this crap in it. I wish somebody would do this. I wish somebody would do that. They've done it. It's been done. There's 2 issues of it out. So it's important that when people ask for these things and they're given to them, that they support, that you buy these things, you purchase these things, you support these projects, because we're giving you what you want. We're giving you what you need, what we need. Society needs just entertainment. Entertain me. Give me a good story, good characters, and just let me unplug. I don't want to unplug from this machine and plug into another machine where I'm being berated, I'm being lectured, or you're taking something that I've grown up loving that I want to share with my family, my kids, the future generation, and you just wiped your ass with it.
Yep.
I don't want to see Superman's kid making out with another dude. I don't want to. Why is the Joker pregnant?
Right.
What's all this? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Someone's already made the template for this. So why don't you just follow that and give us good entertainment? And you've done that. And I again, this is only the beginning. I hope
Appreciate that.
this is merely the tip of the iceberg, and we haven't gotten to the giant mass under the surface. So
Appreciate that, man. Big time, man. Yeah, that's the goal, man. We want to keep up the momentum. This is why, we're speeding things up. We got this most prolific writer, arguably, of our generation, of all time, for that matter. One of Chuck Dixon, writing the next book for us in Alpha Core. So, I'm just trying to keep this thing up. There's a lot of things that plague the industry, the creative stuff, the economic stuff, and I just wanted to be a part of the solution. And the Rippaverse allows me to do that. And it's changed the lives of myself and really a lot of the people that work for this company, because we're able to do what we love, have fun, have a blast, and more importantly, our customers know that they're getting in something that we're thoroughly invested in, that we take very, very serious. And for some people, I was on some guy's show yesterday, and it's funny, there was some guy in the chat was like, yeah, once he starts coming out with a book a month, I'm canceling my half my pull list. Because it's yeah, I mean, that's what it's going to be for some people. It's going to replace that. And you're getting something where the people that are creating it care about it as much as you do. And I think that's what's got lost with the modern entertainment, is that so many of these people that are in charge now of writing these characters that we all know and love, they have seemingly contempt for not only the audience, but the character itself. And that's this whole subversive nature of how they approach entertainment. So we get to correct those problems.
So what size team do you have?
Wow. So, if you include all the distribution as well, with my fulfillment, the team and the warehouse team, right now, I think we're on an upward of 15, 16 employees or something like that. That's not including contractors like Gabe and all those guys. We're just talking day to day,
Like your core, yeah.
That number grows if you're talking about the artists that are for the books, the Cliffs, the Gabe, El Taib, you got Deborah, Chuck Dixon, all these guys. Then you're talking probably 20, 30 people if you include those guys. So yeah, it's a team that's growing, right? We're bringing more people on for the warehouse team, and being able to create good paying jobs for people. It's also something that I take a lot of pride in, or I take to heart, and something that I take very, very seriously, to be able to do that, because this is what it's about.
So your core, the Brandons and the Carol Browns of the world, the about 15, 16 people. So that shows you can make a serious impact when you have a team of people around you who are serious about the goal, the mission, who are focused. And if you bring in good people and let them do what they do. Any good coach will bring in the right people, but let them do what they do. Let them do what they're good at. So you can make a serious impact, and you can really leave a black eye on your competitors with just a tight-knit group of people who are really good and passionate about what they do. So you don't need this huge, entourage, this huge force of people, because then you got a bunch of people who are just hanging on, who are just hanging around. But if you have a core group of people who are all focused, you can move mountains.
That's
And
100% true, man. I mean, like these guys are people that I entrust I mean, we had a big meeting before this, you know what I mean? And I trust them to do the things it is that they do, and they're not a bunch of yes men, you know what I mean? And that's why I
mhm,
have them, right? I have them there to, okay, you're better suited to deal with this than I am. What do you see? Make it make sense to me, and let's make a decision on it. And I trust them to do that. That's such a important thing to have, if you are to be successful, is to have people that are passionate and are also invested in it, and you got to let them be able to do their jobs, man. You absolutely have to, and that shows in their work because they love being here. Like I have a problem, you know, with most people's jobs. They have, you know, the issue of like you just start getting the latter half of the shift. These guys are trying to clock out immediately. I have the complete opposite problem. I gotta tell these guys to stop. Like I gotta like I gave these guys a paid day off on Monday. I was like, don't check your emails, don't do anything. Like just enjoy your day off, do your thing, because these guys actually are invested in this and they want to see it thrive, and those are the best types of people to work with, and that's why we make sure that these people are taken care of.
that's great, man. And I mentioned to you before we came on, I was on Gabe's channel with him and his daughter. Brandon came in real quick, and he kept saying, he's like, hey, I got to get to work. And he was showing us, like, because he was saying in the comments,
Yeah,
he's like, no, I'm at work. But so he came in FaceTime real quick and showed that he was at work, but he was like, yeah, I gotta go. And we've all had jobs before where if you have an opportunity to kick it or talk to somebody, you're probably going to do it because your job doesn't do it for you. Your
yeah,
job, that's not where you want to be. It's not something you enjoy. So that just shows that you really have a good thing going on over there. And I'm sure everybody works really hard
oh yeah,
because that gives you the time or the right attitude to love where you work, and you're more than happy. Like you said, you have to tell them not to check their emails.
yeah,
These
yeah,
people, these people are willing to do their work off the clock. So that means they have a lot of respect for you. They respect the mission and the vision, and they enjoy what they do. And I'm so glad. And as you mentioned, also paying people. You've created an economy. You're paying people's bills for them, and you're creating. They're creating lives for themselves and working for you. So that's great, man. And I really, again, I hope this is the tip of
no,
the iceberg. And I hope to have you back because we've covered a few things, kind of the beginning. But you weren't always so you weren't always a libertarian. You didn't
oh no, I
always
was
have
not.
you didn't you didn't always have a few drops maybe of that conservative blood
Yeah,
flowing through your veins. So there was a change
yeah,
that happened. So I'm hoping to have you back. We can
for sure, we can do that.
talk about that, and maybe you'll have some more projects out by then. Maybe you'll be getting back into that music,
Yeah,
real serious again. So you have some stuff about that. You've made my playlist, man. I don't let people on my playlist all willy nilly. I don't
yes,
because I've experienced good music, so I will take nothing less.
yeah,
So you made it on my playlist, man. I
hell
know
yeah.
that it might not mean much to you,
No,
but
it does, man.
I
It
got
hundred
a I
percent
got a
does.
short list, man. I can count who I listen to on one hand, so I guess I got to add a sixth finger
Hell yeah,
because you're on there, man. And I appreciate your time. I appreciate your efforts. I appreciate your music, the serious nature with which you approach it. It comes through in the lyrics. It comes through in the music. It comes through in the beats, the production. But me, I'm really into lyrics. I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm listening to the setups. I'm listening to the double entendres, triple entendres, and all that. And as you mentioned, I hate when somebody rhymes the first word with the last word,
oh man,
and you got 15 words in between.
yeah,
But as long as you rhyme, I'm going to the store. Me and my buddy, he got some new shoes. Let's get some more.
yeah,
Come on, man.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
elementary.
Dr.
So people,
Seuss, man.
yeah, come on. My 7-year-old will crank out tighter lyrics than that.
Yeah,
So to have somebody who's serious about it and puts out quality, again, we get lost in this sea of garbage. So I'm a big fan of yours, man, and
appreciate you, man.
I'm gonna make your own playlist on my phone. That's serious
Hell yeah,
business.
hell
I
yeah,
got a lot of things on the honeydew list, a lot of things, projects around the house. So you'll be in my earbuds, man. And I thank you.
hell yeah.
Again, I hope to have you back.
Yeah, we'll do it.
And I'm going to put in the comment section or the description box, I should say, I'll put links to your websites, your projects, and everything like that. So you guys make sure you support, because again, you asked for it. I'm tired of this. I want this. He's serving it to you on a silver platter. Make sure you guys support. And I think most importantly, the most important thing I want to say throughout this entire interview is go Niners. That's really what this is.
Of course.
I think that's really, if you boil down this interview, Eric, I think that's what it's about. I think it's go Niners. So,
of course,
you know, we're gonna leave that there, man. We're gonna leave that right there.
Appreciate you, man. No, seriously, man. I appreciate you having me, man. And we'll do it again, man.
For sure, definitely. I'll get in touch. Shout out to Carol Brown, again, a great member of your team, prompt and consistent with those emails. I shoot one, and Carol shot one right back, because that's not always the case. People tell you, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and it never happens. It happened. So I thank you very much for your time. You guys make sure you check out everything Eric July has going on, the comics, the music, everything. Support. This is what we wanted. This is what we needed, and it's here. Make sure you guys check it out and support. And I am Jericho Green, and I'm out.